Am I in the wrong for refusing to pay for my sister's college after she threw my toddler? It feels so unbelievably obvious, but literally everyone keeps telling me that I'm in the wrong and I feel like I'm going insane. For context, I'm 34 and my sister 19 has been staying with my family while she attends college because we live very close by. We were paying for everything because my husband and I make much steadier income than either of my parents, and we have enough savings together that it just makes more sense for us to pay for my sister rather than my parents, who helped pay for both me and my husband when we were both in school. In return for charging her no rent, feeding her, and paying for college, all I occasionally ask for her to help me with is my 22-month-old son. It's never for longer than an hour max. He adores her, so it's much easier to hand him off to her while I try to clean up. She doesn't mind because I usually pay her something like $10 to $15 when it's any longer than 15 minutes. Please understand, this is never, absolutely never for longer than an hour. I understand that she has studies and most times would rather not deal with him, but I always ask if she minds, and whenever she says she's busy or not right now, I always listen and try to find some other way to handle him. Something I have warned her about repeatedly is not to have necklaces, bracelets, earrings, hair clips, etc. when she's taking care of him. Anything that can be pulled or taken off. This is because he has a tendency to pull and play with them, which I know can be painful. Both me and my husband have tried repeatedly to discourage this behavior, but he is still a toddler, so of course it's challenging. 2 days ago, I had to run an errand and it had seemed inconvenient to take my son when he was taking a nap. I asked her if she could watch him while I went and she said it was fine. Before I left, I noticed that she was wearing one of those really thin plastic headbands. I told her it could be dangerous, especially with how thin it was, but she said that if he woke up, she'd take it off and put it out of reach. When I came back, I heard both of them screaming and my toddler wailing. I saw my sister holding her ear and yelling at my toddler while he laid on the floor crying. I was furious. I grabbed him and saw that his head was bleeding. I immediately assumed the worst and called 911 and an ambulance. When the ambulance did arrive and I finally got a closer look at my sister, I could see it was her ear bleeding. Both of them were sent to the hospital. Apparently what had happened was that my son had woken up after I left. The two of them were playing together on the couch when she got distracted by something on her phone. When she looked away, my son took her headband and poked it into her ear. She had apparently thrown him onto the ground to get him away from her and stop him from poking her any further. I was still furious with her for obvious reasons. While thankfully the bleeding was just a large cut he must have gotten when he fell, the doctors say he fell so hard that now he has a concussion. The headband apparently damaged my sister's eardrum, however, and now her hearing is damaged, which I'm sure I'll feel worse about when my emotions aren't so angry. We pay for all of our hospital fees, of course. Obviously, my husband and I told her under no uncertain terms that she was going to have to move out and that we will no longer be paying for her schooling after the semester is complete, but we will not be pressing charges or pursuing legal action, which the paramedics had explained that we could do. The problem is that now, several family members are saying that we were treating her too harsh. My parents are saying that we should forgive her because it was an accident and that I shouldn't have trusted her with my son to begin with since he isn't her responsibility. But if she didn't want to take care of him, she could have just said so. It's not like she's an irresponsible teenager. She's a grown adult capable of, say, restraining a toddler if they grab something that they shouldn't. I don't think that I'm an a-hole at all, but literally everyone in my life is acting like I am for expecting my sister to do the bare basics of keeping my son safe when I ask her to. Am I in the wrong for kicking my parent out and saying this is why I was so effed up as a kid? I had my parents over for dinner this weekend in their 60s, and after my daughter, 10, asked if she could play us a song she had been practicing on her keyboard, she gets lessons. It wasn't perfect, few missed notes, a couple pauses, but she did really well. She looked up at the end, massive smile, and I started clapping, and my parents started fucking laughing. Not just a little chuckle, a massive fucking belly laugh. My mom asked if it was her first time playing it, and my dad said it had to have been. A dog could have played that better. It was like my daughter was shrinking on the spot, and she looked down and said, "No, I've had 2 lessons, but doing it with 2 hands is hard." And they just laughed even fucking harder. I just stood up, took their cups, and said, "Leave. Now." My mom tried to say how they hadn't finished their drinks, they wanted to hear another song, etc. I said, "Get your stuff and get the fuck out of my house right now." My dad started doing this huffing thing he does when someone dares to speak up to him, and my mom said there was no need to be like this, that I can't protect her all the time and she was preparing my daughter for the real world. I said, it's not teaching the real world. They're just nasty little bullies picking on children, and shit like this is why I was so messed up as a kid. Now leave. They got their stuff and left. I sat with my daughter and explained how proud of her I was and how well she was doing. To ignore them. They were just being cruel because they don't know any other way to be, and asked if she could please play it again, which she did. On Sunday, I messaged and said until they can behave like decent human beings that we're taking a break away from them. My dad replied that it was my choice, but he didn't realize he raised me to be so precious. Now, my lovely brown-nosing golden child of a sister is getting involved. She phoned me today with my parents' version of events telling me I was a nasty piece of work and should never speak to my parents that way, that I'm wrapping up my child in cotton wool and blah blah blah. I just told her to go F herself and hung up. I'm not asking if I'm in the wrong for standing up for my daughter. I'll always do that. But I did go pretty 0 to 100. I kicked them out straight away. I swore at them in front of my daughter, and I did raise my voice at the end when I said leave. I was and still am angry. I don't think I'd even accept an apology from them at this point. This behavior isn't new, it's decades old. But this is the first time it affected my daughter. Did I go too far or react too much? Am I in the wrong for making my entire office jealous after they forgot to include me in the group lunch order again? I, 27 female, have been dealing with a petty but annoying situation at my office. Every Wednesday, someone collects orders for this amazing local pizza place that doesn't deliver. They make the best pizzas in town. Wood-fired, fresh ingredients, the works. The catch is, they require a minimum of 5 pizzas for a takeout order. For the past 3 months, I keep getting forgotten when they take orders. It started when I had to change my lunch hour to 1 p.m. instead of noon because of project meeting. Every week, I put my order in their shared Excel sheet, and every week somehow they ordered just before I added it or didn't see my entry. Here's the kicker. I literally sit right next to Kevin, 31 male, who collects the money and places the order. He has to physically turn his back to me to avoid seeing me. Last Wednesday was the last straw. I heard them all planning the order, watched Kevin collect the money, and my name was definitely on that spreadsheet. Yet, somehow, when the food arrived, no pizza for me. Kevin's response? Oh, sorry, must have missed your name again. We already hit the minimum order though. So today, I decided to be petty. I called the pizza place first thing in the morning and spoke to the owner, explained the situation and asked if I could place a single order for pickup if I paid a little extra. He laughed and said he liked my style and agreed. When everyone's pizza arrived at 12, I waited. Then, at 12:55, right before my lunch, I walked in with a pizza that smelled divine. The owner had made me a special off-menu item with truffle oil, prosciutto, and buffalo mozzarella. The entire office could smell it. Suddenly, everyone was asking where I got it, since they thought this place had a 5 pizza minimum. I just smiled and said, oh, I have an arrangement with the owner now. By the way, he says hi, Kevin. Now half of the office is mad that I went behind their backs to get special treatment, and the other half is mad at Kevin for excluding me all this time. Kevin is especially angry because apparently some people have now asked him to be removed from the order coordinator role. My pizza was delicious, but there's definitely tension in the office now. Worth noting that 3 people have already asked for my pizza connection for their own orders. Am I in the wrong for escalating a petty pizza situation? My mother's new fiance wants me to call him Dad. He's 24, I'm 35, and my mom's 58. How do I navigate this? This is all so weird. I'm a 35-year-old man, and for some backstory, my dad died when I was 19, leaving my mom with me and my 2 siblings. I'm the oldest. It took some time, but eventually, my mom started dating again. We don't live together per se, but our houses back onto each other and have a gate, so it's pretty common for her to offer to do my laundry, or me just go over for dinner, or go look after our dog, that kind of stuff. Plus, me and my siblings go over there for dinner every other Friday night or so. A bit after she started, the men she's been dating have been getting younger and younger, and I've never had a problem with them. She's been very open to me and my siblings that she wants to get married again, and we've always been supportive, at least after the initial shocks. The latest guy is by far the most serious, and they've been dating since around last June. He proposed at the start of autumn, and they want to get married next summer. Again, me and my siblings are fine with this because it's her life and we trust him. He's a nice guy and they clearly love each other. So, long story short is, this weekend, her fiance, let's call him Phil, calls me and asks me if I could come over. I say, yeah, sure, I'll be over there after work, and I assume he just needed help with some DIY stuff they're doing. When I get over there, he calls me Sport and says that we need to talk. I should mention this is something that he does to me and my little brother, calling us things like kid, sport, scout, little buddy, or my personal favorite, calling us red and blue, seemingly out of nowhere. My brother is 30, by the way. He tried it with my little sister, 28, and called her princess once, but he stopped when she just stared at him. So, thing with Phil is that he just reminds me a lot of Charlie Day's character in Horrible Bosses, and that his sole ambition has always been to meet a girl, get married, and have a family. When he told me and my brother about this, my brother made some joke about how maybe our mom's going to come short on the last part, and he got very upset, but they made up after. Anyway, so I go around and ask if my mom's around, and he says no, it's just him and that we really need to talk man to man. I say sure, and he starts talking about he always wanted to be a father, etc., and raise a son to call his own, and then he drops his bombshell by saying, now, I know I can never replace your father, the man who made you, but it would mean the world to me if you could call me Dad. I'll admit it, I snickered a little, and then I knew he was serious because he looked like he was about to cry, and he didn't drop it either. I asked if he really meant it, and he got really emotional and started talking about what it means to be a man, and how his purpose is to have and provide for a family, and he wants me and my siblings to be part of that family. Like, he reiterated that he'll never replace my father, and this did rub me the wrong way a bit, but he's ready to step up and be my dad and provide for and protect me and my siblings. And I'm just sat there thinking, dude, I'm a decade older than you and live in a separate house. I don't need providing for, and even if I did, I don't think a guy a third of my age who works part-time at a hardware store and is into collecting manga is the man to do it. No offense if you're into that. I don't know. I was a bit taken aback. I was in shock, so just said, okay. And he gets emotional again, but in a happy way, talking about how he wants to go camping or go to a baseball game. I don't even like baseball. And how he joined the Lions this year and how he wants to bring me into it too, as his boy, which just feels so surreal. Even more so as I'm a Shriner, so all of this talk of service and charity isn't the brag he thinks it is. Because again, I'm 10 years older than this guy. Well, I ended up by saying, this has gotten a bit too weird and I was going home. He got very upset and I left. Called my brother and he agreed it sounds weird as fuck. Later, my mom called me and she wasn't disappointed, but admitted it's made him very upset and depressed. I told her that if he's embarrassed, he doesn't need to be. I get he's excited about the marriage and we can just laugh this off as a funny story. She then said that wasn't what he's upset about. He, and she too a bit, is upset about the fact that he poured his heart out and I rejected him. She said, yeah, it is a bit kooky, but this is how he proves to himself he's a man. And I guess I was a bit angry and said something like, first off, it's not my job to certify what's between his legs, and second, this doesn't prove he's a man. It just proves he's a nut job. I apologized immediately, but she said she didn't want to hear it and hung up. She called back 10 minutes later and we apologized and she begged me to just go along with it until he has some kids to call his own. I won't go into too much details here, but she sort of let it slip that they plan to try IVF treatments because she's not ready to give up on being a mom just yet. And while I have my own thoughts about whether or not that's a good idea, I'm not here to litigate on that. We finished up fine and I reiterated I'd support her and she agreed that it was definitely a stressful situation for me, but begged me to at least think about it. Which leads me here. I thought it over and obviously I'm going to say no. I have a dad and he died. Rest in peace, Dad. And that's the only dad that I've ever needed, I've ever wanted, and I'll ever bestow that title upon. I'm not asking if someone's unreasonable or what I should do. More so, what I should say. This clearly means a lot to him for some reason, and I deeply love my mom, but I want to try to minimize the damage, especially as we're still so involved in each other's lives and they live behind me. How can I make it clear to them, as painlessly as possible, that I think this is weird and borderline offensive? I really don't want to rip the band-aid off because I fear what it might do to the family. So, what should I do? Am I in the wrong for refusing to leave a wedding because I wore a dress that looks white under a black light? A few months ago, I attended a close friend's wedding with my husband. I wore a yellow dress. Think like Belle and Beauty of the Beast yellow. Bumblebee yellow. So yellow that I did not question if it was appropriate or not to wear it to a wedding, and neither did my friends nor my family. I arrive at the wedding, we have a ceremony, the cocktail hour, the dinner and reception. I get many compliments on the dress, and the bride even comments on how much she loves it several times. Towards the end of the reception, the venue dimmed the lights and turned on some black lights. These black lights made the dress appear more white than yellow. A member of the wedding party approached me while the black lights were on and said that I needed to leave because my dress was white and inappropriate. I stated that the dress was yellow, but the black lights were making it appear white. The member of the wedding party stated that if I didn't leave, she would make me. I stated that I'm here to celebrate my friend, repeated that the dress was yellow and that I will not be leaving early. The conversation, while heated, did not have raised voices or foul language from either side, but I will say it was tense. The wedding party member walked off and I watched as they immediately went to talk to the groom, angrily pointing in my direction. The groom shrugged and continued to dance. The next morning, I was approached by a different friend at breakfast, not in the wedding party, who stated that they heard what happened and that I should have left when asked because it made people uncomfortable and that I made it about me partying rather than respecting wedding etiquette. I have felt incredibly embarrassed about this since, so am I in the wrong for not leaving the wedding when asked? My abusive husband had a car accident and now he's a completely different man. On August 15th, 2023, my life was turned upside down. My husband got into a terrible car accident. A drunk driver hit him head on and his injuries were severe with broken bones, internal bleeding, and a traumatic brain injury. He was in a coma for 6 days and honestly, no one knew if he'd survive. Even worse, I didn't know if I wanted him to. Our marriage had been awful. He was emotionally abusive, selfish, controlling, and at times, physically abusive. I stayed because of our daughter. I didn't want her growing up without a father, but I also couldn't keep living in fear. I had already started preparing to leave. I saved money, made plans, and had everything lined up for a divorce. But when the accident happened, I was hit with the horrible thought that I couldn't tell anyone. I secretly hoped that he wouldn't make it. But when he woke up, everything was different. He didn't recognize me as his wife. He thought I was still his fiance. He was confused about everything. His age, his life, also the fact that we had a daughter. It was a bit surreal, but there was something almost refreshing about it. He was happy and kind in a way I hadn't seen in years. I felt like I was meeting a completely new person. The doctors told me that he's suffering from long-term memory loss. They told me it could take days, months, maybe even years if his memories come back. If they come back at all. It's hard not knowing how much he'll ever truly remember. It took a few weeks for him to adjust to everything. He had to process his physical recovery and the shock of being a father and husband again. Slowly, he returned to work. At first, I was worried he might not be able to cope, but he quickly went from being someone who was underperforming and on the verge of being laid off to a top performer, even earning a promotion. The compensation from the accident allowed us to pay off almost all of our debts. For the first time in years, we're financially stable and I felt like maybe, just maybe, things could get better. Now, he's like a different person. Or rather, he's like the person that I first fell in love with. He's become the kind of partner that I dreamed of having, the kind of father I always wanted for our child. He's constantly telling me how much he loves me, how grateful he is to have me in his life, and he dotes on our daughter. I'm not even sure he realizes she's 3 because he doesn't remember her birth. He just accepted it as a fact and adores her completely. Lately, he started to regain some of his memories. He says it's been happening in flashes. Sometimes he'll remember things about our past life, and he gets confused. He often asks me if certain things really happened, like if we really went through what we did, or if he was truly the person I described. He'll ask, did I really treat you that way? Was I really like that? And every time, I have to tell him the truth. I tell him that yes, he was abusive, and yes, he did hurt me. Each time I confirm it, he breaks down crying, apologizing profusely, telling me how sorry he is. He says over and over that he can't believe that he became that person. I know this sounds like something out of a movie, but I'm just living in this surreal reality where I'm finally getting the life that I dreamt of. He's affectionate, attentive, and goes out of his way to make me feel loved. He's an incredible dad to our daughter, and seeing them together laughing, playing, genuinely bonding brings me to tears sometimes. I've never felt so loved in my life. I still find it hard to believe sometimes, but seeing him try, seeing him work so hard, has been nothing short of amazing. I feel so conflicted. People might think that I'm awful for not telling him everything right away, or might just think that I'm a fool for staying after everything and hoping he's changed. But how do you tell someone they were once your biggest source of pain when they're now the person you love waking up to every day? How do you shatter the hope they have in this new version of themselves? Right now, we're finally safe and happy, and I want to hold on to this as long as I can. Am I wrong for that?